Thank you very much, dear colleagues and friends. First of all, let me express my sincere gratitude to the organizers of the conference, our Belarusian friends, for the invitation to speak at this authoritative forum, which has been convened in Minsk for the second year in a row, on the initiative of the President of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Grigoryevich Lukashenko, who opened the discussion very vividly today. And I think that many of the ideas that he expressed will help us develop practical recommendations based on the results of this conference. And the main trend for years has been the formation of a multipolar world order. This is not recognized by everyone. The transformation taking place in the world is a natural, irreversible process. It is associated with objective changes in the balance in the world, the strengthening of new, neither Western centers of economic growth and influence. And this trend, of course, contributes to the democratization of international relations, in which there should be no hegemony of anyone, and in which the principles of the UN Charter should be observed, and not selectively, but in their entirety and interrelationship. This is a fundamental point. The key principle of the Charter is the sovereign equality of states. This principle is the legal basis of multipolarity. Our commitment to it also determines our approach to the development of relations with the countries of Eurasia, the largest, richest in natural resources, and the fastest-growing continent. Guided by this logic, President Putin put forward the idea of forming a large Eurasian partnership as the widest possible integration contour in the interests of expanding and liberalizing trade and investment ties, implementing cross-border infrastructure projects, developing a transport and logistics network, and harmonizing integration processes back in 2000. The Great Eurasian Partnership, in turn, will lay a solid economic and material foundation for building an architecture of equal and indivisible Eurasian security, security from threats and challenges, common to all countries of the continent. Speaking at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia on June 14th of this year, President Putin clearly outlined our interest in creating such an architecture as a system of interstate agreements and institutions that ensure primarily the responsibility of participating countries for resolving regional conflicts and maintaining stability, while preventing destructive external interference. I would like to emphasize that the President of Russia has repeatedly stated that our vision of a great Eurasian partnership and the architecture of Eurasian security presupposes openness for all countries of our continent without exception, and for all associations of the continent without exception. This means that no one is going to close the doors for the countries of the western part of Eurasia either. We will welcome their involvement in the processes of pan-Eurasian cooperation, of course, exclusively on the basis of equality, and with the rejection of hostile bloc politics and neo-colonial practices. These are absolutely necessary conditions, because for a long time it was different. For example, without exception, all schemes that relied on the concept of Euro-Atlantic security served to preserve the dominant position of the United States and deter their competitors, including Russia. The main role in this was assigned to NATO, which finally, now it is clear to everyone, crushed the European Union, which was created by Europeans for Europeans, it seems. In gross violations of the Helsinki Final Act and other commitments with the West, the OSCE's governing structures were actually completely privatized, about which the President of Belarus spoke very eloquently today. The OSCE has never been able to become a mechanism for implementing the principle of indivisibility of security, which was proclaimed at its creation and repeatedly confirmed, including at the summits in Istanbul in 1999 year, and in Astana in 2010 year. The documents adopted there at the highest level explicitly state that no one will strengthen their security at the expense of the security of others, and that no group of countries and no organization has the right to claim dominance in the OSCE space. All NATO leaders signed up to this commitment, but in practice they did exactly the opposite. Contrary to the assurances of the Soviet leadership, and despite our repeated warnings over the past 20-odd years, the North Atlantic Alliance has recklessly expanded to the east, creating direct military threats to Russia directly on our borders. Such an aggressive course eventually provoked the Ukrainian crisis. Russian Revolution. The trigger was organized in February of the year 2014 by Washington and its European allies in Kiev, which brought to power the ultranationalists, who proclaimed a course of extermination of all Russian, and started a war with millions of Russian people and people of Russian culture, who refused to recognize the criminal power of the putschists. This is precisely the root causes of the crisis, which the leaders of the West today prefer not to remember and repeat by rote, about the return of Ukraine to the borders of 1991st year. They are interested only in the territory, and not in the fate of people whose ancestors lived for centuries in the Crimea, Donbass, Novorossiya, whom the leaders of the Kiev regime publicly called inhumans, terrorists, threatened to rot their children in basements. And Zelensky, back in 2021 year, demanded that everyone who feels their involvement in Russian culture get out to Russia. Since the 2014 year, laws have been consistently adopted in Ukraine prohibiting the Russian language in education, the media, culture, and all other areas. Recently, the parliament banned the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Let me remind you, in this regard, Article 1 of the UN Charter requires respect for human rights, regardless of race, gender, language, and religion, as it is written there. But the West turns a blind eye to this gross violation by the tiredly Russophobic, racist regime in Kiev, continuing to promote the dead end, I would even say, stupid formula of Zelensky's peace, which call for Russia's surrender. And a couple of weeks ago, this citizen unveiled an equally schizophrenic victory plan. Of course, neither a formula, nor a plan, nor fantasies about the membership of Kiev-controlled Ukraine, either in NATO or in the European Union, do not bring peace in Europe closer. Stability in this part of the Eurasian continent will be achieved only if long-term reliable security guarantees are provided. Well, for example, as they were set out in our initiatives of December 2021 and were rejected by the West. As Alexander Grigoryevich Lukashenko also eloquently reminded today, NATO has not had enough of the war that it unleashed against Russia at the hands of the illegal authorities in Kiev, and the entire OSCE space is not enough for it. Now the United States and its satellites are trying to turn the whole of Eurasia into an arena of geopolitical confrontation. The alliance wrote down its documents that threats against it also come from the Asia-Pacific region, including the South China Sea. The Taiwan Strait wrote down in its documents that threats come, as I have already said, from various parts of the east of our continent, and set out to assert its military dominance, not only in Europe, but also in the east of Eurasia. NATO is being introduced into this region under the slogan of Indo-Pacific strategies, eroding the inclusive mechanisms that have been built around Asians for decades. In return, Washington is putting together all sorts of triples fours like the OQ, a warehouse of blocks with the participation of the United States, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and other closed configurations with the explicit purpose of deterring China, isolating Russia, and putting rude pressure on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The situation in the Middle Eastern part of Eurasia is developing even more dramatically. The unilateral withdrawal of the United States from the agreements on the Iranian nuclear program, which were approved by the UN Security Council, and Washington's persistent desire to monopolize the Arab-Israeli settlement process, turned into disastrous consequences. putting this strategically important region on the verge of complete destabilization, of a major war. The Biden administration is blocking any effort to end the tragedy of the Palestinian people. While condemning terrorism in all its manifestations, we categorically reject the collective punishment of the residents of Gaza and the West Bank. The West is trying to keep quiet about this, but in 1 year Israel's operation killed twice as many Palestinian civilians as the number of civilian victims on both sides in the 10 years after the coup in Kiev. Think about these numbers. The West does not stop its destructive activity in other parts of the Eurasian continent. In the South Caucasus, he persistently imposes his services in the normalization of Armenian-Azerbaijani relations. Having fled Afghanistan after 20 years of occupation, the United States and its allies today want to get involved in the fragile process of stabilizing the situation in this country. They invent excuses to resume their military presence in the countries of Central Asia. As a result of the aggressive actions of the United States, NATO, and the European Union, the risks of fragmentation of our continent have increased. The Eurasian security architecture we are discussing is designed to become a constructive alternative to these negative trends, stabilize the military-political situation in the continental space, ensure its unity and interconnectedness, and remove threats from the Western Euro-Atlantic direction. It is obvious to us that there can be no return to the previous models in which the United States played the main role, with its claim to exclusivity. Moreover, wherever America tried to rule, it did not get better. It is necessary to take into account new geopolitical, international legal realities, generate ideas based not on the right of the strong, but on equality and an honest balance of interests. Our vision of the Eurasian architecture is harmoniously combined with the Global Security Initiative, put forward by President of the People's Republic of China Xi Jinping, one of the key principles of which is the need to address the root causes of conflicts, whether in the Middle East, the Balkans, Ukraine, or Southeast Asia. This is the key to creating a more just world order and genuine multilateralism. In the work of our conference, I consider it important to take into account the accumulated experience of the legal formalization of confidence-building measures of a political and military nature between states in different parts of the continent, in accordance with their needs and existing national potentials, that is, to go as if firm life, firm practice. In particular, with our Belarusian friends, we have developed a draft security concept for the Union State, and are finalizing the preparation of a bilateral interstate treaty on security guarantees, a treaty that will be aimed at further strengthening obligations for reliable mutual protection from external threats. In the context of escalating tensions in the east of the continent, we pay great attention to ensuring peace on the Korean Peninsula. As you know, in the development of friendly relations with Canada, the Russian-Korean Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty was signed and entered into force, which is designed to play an important role in ensuring the security of our countries and stabilizing the situation in Northeast Asia. The upcoming Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement between Russia and Iran will be a serious factor in strengthening Russian-Iranian relations. The agreement, as I said, is being prepared for signing in the near future. The parties desire for closer cooperation in the field of defense and for interaction in the interests of peace and security. At the regional and global levels will be confirmed there. The relationship of strategic cooperation and comprehensive partnership between Russia and the People's Republic of China is of crucial importance for strengthening stability in Eurasia, ensuring the progressive growth of creative cooperation in all areas for the benefit of the peoples of the two countries. These relations contribute to the harmonization of integration processes on the continent and serve as an important stabilizing factor on a global scale in the face of the destructive actions of the collective West, in its attempt to maintain its hegemony. In addition to bilateral efforts to strengthen security, multilateral associations such as the SCO, the STO, the CIS, the Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Persian Gulf, meetings on interaction, confidence-building measures in Asia, also play a special role in Eurasia. Each of these forums has a rich agenda on a variety of security dimensions. The growing awareness of the responsibility of the regional players themselves for the settlement of disputes in their parts of Eurasia is manifested in the activities of such structures as the 3+3 platform for the South Caucasus, the Moscow format of consultations on Afghanistan, and the mechanism of the neighboring countries of this country, the Astana format on Syria. I believe that the experience gained in all of these formats should be actively used to harmonize existing initiatives, including in the context of the formation of the Eurasian Security architecture. In June of this year, together with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Belarus, we signed a joint appeal to the executive heads of multilateral organizations of Eurasia with a proposal to join the initiative, to develop Eurasian areas of diversity and multipolarity in the 21st century. Our Belarusian friends came up with this idea at the first Minsk conference a year ago, and we actively supported them. We see the Eurasian Charter as a program document, which will set out the framework principles of the architecture of continental security based on the norms of the UN Charter. I will draw once again, not selectively, but in all their completeness and interrelationship. A separate session is scheduled at the current conference to discuss the substantive elements of the Charter, as I understand it. We hope that it will contribute to the coordination of recommendations on how to protect our common space from military and any other threats in the interests of billions of people. And don't forget, Alexander Grigoryevich Lukashenko has just been speaking here, from this rostrum, and invited all of us to the next conference in 2025 year. I wish us success.